In 2011, Interjet was Mexico's third largest airline by passengers and was looking for a regional aircraft to support its domestic network. The obvious candidates were from Bombardier and Embraer, but the carrier instead signed for 30 Sukhoi Superjet 100s. The financial logic was understandable at the time. The SSJ-100 was being offered at roughly 15% below the price of comparable Western regional jets, and Interjet's then CEO noted that the capital cost of 10 SSJ-100s was approximately equal to the pre-delivery payment for a single Airbus A320. And so Interjet took delivery of its first SSJ-100 in June 2013 and eventually accepted 22 of the 30 aircraft ordered. The airline flew the type across its domestic Mexican network and on short international routes. Unfortunately, the situation began to unravel almost immediately after deliveries began. By January 2018, just 4.5 years into operations, 4 Superjets had been grounded for months waiting for spare parts. Sukhoi Civil Aircraft stated that delivery of spares to the airline was affected by the systematic overdue payment from Interjet itself to spares suppliers, including the engine manufacturer. And so this was not a supply problem as much as it was a payment problem compounded by a supply problem in a market where nobody else was flying the type and no spare engines sat waiting on the shelf. Rather than wait months for parts from Russia, Interjet began harvesting components from grounded Superjets in 2018 to keep the remaining active aircraft flying. By mid-2019, 15 of 22 airframes were in storage, with dozens of engines out of service due to unpaid repair bills. By January 2020, the situation had deteriorated further, as only 4 of the 22 aircraft were in service. The others were parked at Toluca Airport, some in functional storage, others already cannibalized beyond reasonable restoration. Interjet's financial position was already critical before any pandemic arrived, but in March 2020, leasing companies immediately began repossessing its 66 A320 family aircraft, leaving the carrier with nothing but the Superjets. And so Interjet flew its last commercial flight on December 11, 2020. The airline at its very end was left with the 22 Superjets, the aircraft it had spent 2 years trying to return to Russia or sell to another operator. But things would get worse for the defunct carrier. A labour dispute with former employees turned a straightforward asset liquidation into a 3-way dispute between creditors, former employees, and the aircraft's actual legal owners, a Russian state-backed banking consortium led by VEB, Russia's state development bank. In early 2022, the bank consortium was interested in restoring several airframes to offer to new customers in the region. It all seemed plausible, at least up until Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the sanctions that followed. RBC Ukraine reports that by mid-2023, components were being stripped and auctioned. Engine parts and landing gear assemblies from the parked Superjets were put up for sale through Mexican commercial auctions, an irony not lost on anyone following Russia's domestic aviation crisis, given that Russian carriers were simultaneously desperate for those components to keep their own SSJ-100 fleets airworthy. The sanctions that blocked Russia from exporting spare parts to Mexico were the same sanctions blocking the return of the Mexican airframes or their components to Russia. The parts were being sold into a market Russia could not access. Simple Flying contributor Antonio Di Trapani has an incredibly detailed and in-depth report on this whole saga, so if you're interested in this story, we hope you'll check out the full article on simpleflying.com. We'll leave a link in the video description. But what do you think of this whole ordeal? Let us know by leaving a comment. And be sure to check out Simple Flying's flight tracker. From live alerts and data on commercial, military and government flights, it goes way beyond your standard tracker. It was built specifically for AvGeeks, free and live, right at your fingertips. In addition to our daily YouTube videos, Simple Flying publishes over 150 articles every week. If you're looking for the latest aviation news and insights, visit simpleflying.com.